How now, brown cow?
Unique
How
New York.
now?
Unique New York.
New
Unique
York.
New York.
Welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. I am here as always with Amber, with Ren. Good to see you too. We're talking about scaling a coaching service today. Now, this could be scaling any service business really, but we're talking mostly about scaling a coaching service. And this is actually not about hiring people, because that's one of the biggest misconceptions is the way to scale is you just hire more people. And most people hire coaches or hire assistants or VAs or salespeople into a business, a coaching business that is not actually built to scale. And so what I want to talk about more than anything is actually going back and designing your product, because a service business is a product if you build it right, and designing your product so that it can be scaled. And that comes down to figuring out how to choose your customers and being confident enough in that to say no to somebody who is not the right customer for you. Building in the combination of technology to allow you to actually scale what you're trying to do, because technology and automation and content delivery systems and things like that are meant to amplify humans where humans need to show up by removing them where humans don't need to be. The misconception is that it replaces humans. It doesn't. It actually amplifies humans when used properly. And then what you can do is you can start very strategically picking out the people to work in your business who fill in the gaps that either you don't want to fill or you're not as good as filling. In my case, I own 2 coaching services right now, generate many millions of dollars a year in profit, and I have never worked in either one of them. And so if that is a reason to listen to me, maybe it's a reason to listen to me about this. I kind of think that I know what I'm doing with it. I think that what I've been able to do is I've been able to recognize where I'm good and where I'm not good, which is, I think, one of the most important aspects of business. Figure out where you should show up and where you shouldn't show up. For me, I'm very, very good at designing systems. I'm very, very good at building business systems, at productizing service. I'm really fucking bad at delivering the service.
Subjectively bad.
Objectively, not subjectively, objectively bad.
This isn't an opinion that John's sharing right now.
This is no opinion.
Yeah, it's reality.
You would not want me to be your coach. Like, you straight up wouldn't. Ask Amber how flaky I am. And the reason for that is
Flaky Goodman.
the reason for that is I'm extremely compartmentalized with the way that I work. That if I'm in a project, I am 100% in that project, and I basically ignore everything else. And so the way that I've been able to manage this with all of the different business ventures and things that I do is I design all of the things that I do knowing how I work, right? And what that means is that there's a bare minimum to maintain that's really, really easy to maintain. And there are periods where I can amplify that and add into it and continue to add to that machine, like what I'm doing right now with platform, with content, with stuff. And then the rest of the time, if I'm working on another big project, I'm 100% in that big project and I'm maintaining everything else. So I'll tell you what I mean by that really, really quick, because I realize that that's a bit kind of airy-fairy, kind of fluffy, is 5 Reps Friday, my weekly email, has been designed to be very low lift on my end. I know that I want to communicate ongoing. I know that I want to share ideas ongoing. I know that I want to be top of mind ongoing. And so a weekly email like 5 Reps Friday, very strategically with blocks that I know that I can identify throughout the week and plug in, that email will take me anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to write once a week. Like, I can maintain that. The same with my Instagram. It's not designed. It doesn't take much to do beyond writing it. And it's the type of material that can be republished and reposted, old material. So if I'm in a period where I'm all in on writing a book, or if I'm in a period where I'm all in on Quick Coach, or if I'm all in on building out like the online trainer mentorship, or doing a project for the online trainer mentorship for a few months at a time, Those other things can be maintained, not necessarily grown, but they can be maintained at a bare minimum, and that's very much by design. And then in those in-between zones, which is kind of where I'm at right now, like the book is with the editor. I'm waiting for it back. And in that in-between space, now I'm adding to the content to the platform building machine. So what I've done is I built a whole bunch of systems. You learned about some of them in the last episode. But I built a whole bunch of systems to generate email leads, to generate more conversations. And I'm working even on the PTDC website to basically get more out of the same actions as I'm doing. And I'm all in on that for 3 or 4 weeks. And then that will just sit there because it's additive, right? What was the example that we used to give all the time on the old online trainer show, Ren, of working in your business versus working on your business? Right. I remember there was a very distinct example that we used to give, which was you came to me and you said something to the tune of you were designing like a Facebook banner. Like you were like designing.
I remember that episode. But I don't remember what we said specifically, but I had spent time doing that thing. And I just happened to mention, we weren't planning on talking about that. I happened to mention it on the show, and it's a great opening for a teachable moment.
Right.
I just don't know what the moment was, John. I'm almost 50 years old, for God's sake. That was like 30 years ago. I was just a boy then, John. Not the man I am
Here's what
today.
Here's what I remember. Every single time I look in the mirror, I'm like, shit, I got a lot of gray hair today, man.
Right.
Here's what I remember about that moment is you were designing an image for your Facebook profile cover or whatever, right?
Yes.
And you said, yo, I'm working on my business today, right? I'm building this image. And I said, no, you're not. You're working in your business. If you were working on your business, what you would do is you would actually build some sort of protocol or framework to say, when I design this type of image,
yes,
here's what needs to be in it.
So
and you would document that so that you could hand it off the next time. The next time that you need an image for something changed, you could hand it off and somebody else could build that image, right? And so what I'm constantly trying to do is it's often a little bit more work in the moment, but what I'm constantly trying to do is I'm constantly trying to build additional pieces to the machine so that as I create a single piece of content, let's say on social media, right? That piece of content then begins some sort of a flywheel that captures people, maybe attracts new people, but captures people, invites them to go deeper with me, have conversations with me, and then has all these little robots to communicate with them in all these different ways. And that's built over time, right? So when it comes down to actually scaling your coaching, what you often need to do is you're going to need to take one step back in order to take 2 steps forward. And the reason that I say that, we talk a lot about the importance of going deep, of becoming the obvious choice to a few people instead of like an okay choice to a lot of people. We talk a lot about becoming famous to the family here as a way to find your customers. And I do believe that that is the fastest, easiest way to get started. But the reality of it is when you're new, you're probably going to take on any customer who is willing to pay you. And what that means is that you're probably going to reinvent your service for every new customer. You're going to build brand new programs. You're going to build brand new communication systems. You're probably communicating differently to a lot of your different clients, which is fine, which is totally fine when you're new. Because when you're new, you're figuring shit out.
Right.
So use this as experience to do a whole bunch of different stuff and see what feels good, see what doesn't feel good. And also like taking feedback, what worked, what didn't work, right? But when you decide that it is time to scale, what you will have to do is you're going to have to decide on probably 1, maybe 2 levels of offering service. And the reason for that is you're going to need to productize it. And part of productizing it is going to be, I'm only working with a specific type of person who fits into this bucket that I can compartmentalize. Or that I can not compartmentalize, that I can basically put into this structure and have this framework around serving them. And I'll give you a very distinct example of how we do that with the online trainer mentorship. because this is exactly what we do. And this is why we turn down so many people. It's not that we can't help a lot of people build, call it online training businesses. To be honest, what we do with the Online Trainer Academy and with the Online Trainer Mentorship could probably help people in a lot of different industries as well. And we do have a lot of people in other industries take the Online Trainer Academy, but that's, not a service-based thing. That's a course for the most part, and then there's Coach and Upgrade. But we don't accept them because we won't be able to scale that service, which means we would not be able to, A, deliver the quality that we want to, at B, the profitability that we want to be delivering that service at, and still be able to grow by selectively adding people into it. So the first step is to recognize when you're ready to scale. And generally, and I'll say all of this, I should have actually said this at the beginning of the episode, you might not be there yet. You might not be here yet. It's still good to kind of hear this conversation and keep it in the back of your mind, because as I'll tell you in a second, a lot of people, when they hit this point where they're ready to scale, leave a very good business model and decide and choose a really shit business model. Mm-hmm. And I call that the passive income fallacy, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. But this way, when you're ready to scale, you kind of know what pieces to put into place, and you kind of understand that, okay, I'm ready to scale. This means that I'm going to need to take a step back and really work on my business for a little bit of time. Generally, call it 3 months, depends where you're at, but generally it'll take you 2 or 3 months where you're really working on these systems and building them in. And then it's going to be 6 months to a year minimum where you're basically testing out the new systems that you're building, because you're not going to get it right at the beginning. You're going to get it good enough, but you're not going to get it right at the beginning. It took us, with the Online Trainer Mentorship, it took us about 2 years to really find our flow. Like, don't get me wrong, we were doing a good job before then for the people that we worked with, but it took us about 2 years to really say, like, yo, we're nailing it now. And that's working with hundreds of people over those 2 years. We're about 3.5 years in on that program now. And you just see now the renewal rates are jumping, the referrals are jumping, the success is jumping. Like once you hit it, you know it. So let's first talk about this passive income fallacy, and then I'll talk about building your pillars and your templates, and that goes into the conversation of choosing your customers. It's not a long conversation. We've spoken about it here before. Coaching is a phenomenal business model if you know how to scale it, because it is unbelievably profitable and it's cash up front. It's a cash up front business. If you do it right, you should be able to run a coaching business at about 60 to 70% profitability. I don't know many other businesses in the world where you can get cash up front and maintain a 60% profitability on that business model. And yet, a lot of people think that when they reach a modicum of success in coaching, the next logical step is to trade in this arguably best business model in the world for a really shitty business model where they're earning very small amounts of money from a lot of people at a much lower profitability, hoping that this will somehow magically lead to either passive income or scale. Now, this could be software, and I'm talking about this like as somebody who built a software business, but I did it knowingly that I could self-fund it and wait, and also that this is like a 10-year project for me is Quick Coach. Like we didn't try to make money on it for the first year or 2 years. Or most often what people do is they build a low-end subscription app or membership where they're like, okay, I can't train anybody else myself, so the next logical thing must be to scale my efforts and build an app where I'm going to sell it for $20 or $50 a month, and I'm going to get all these people to buy it because everybody says that I'm too expensive now. It's like, well, they say you're too expensive. They're going to also not buy for $50 or $20. And if you do the math, you need, oh God, I wish I had the math in front of me. It's something like for $50,000 more a year, you need 1,850 customers. paying you $27, and you need 21 customers paying you $200 a month. My math might not be exact on that, but it's the difference between like 20 to 30 customers in a coaching business and almost 2,000 customers in a subscription-based business. So if you are already having people who are saying to you, you're too expensive, which basically means I'm not bought in enough, I don't trust you enough, this isn't important to me enough to buy right now. You think that you can somehow manufacture close to 2,000 customers? Or even in a subscription service, like, okay, those customers are going to stay for 3 to 4 months if you do a great job. So now you're talking about 500 customers. Like, there's no chance. And so then you're going to have to pay for ads, which is a totally new thing to do, which is going to cut into your profitability, which is going to leave you competing with companies like Beachbody, like Apple Fitness, like Peloton. So now you're competing on ad spend for low-end commoditized fitness services with multi-billion or even trillion-dollar companies. That is not a game that I want to play, man. So, long story short, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with subscription services, but scaling a service business is way more profitable, is way easier. And if you know how to do it, it's not hard to do if you have the demand. So at what point do you scale? Generally, Amber, what would you say? 30, 35 clients is about what we find that people can take on at once?
Depending on what the level of service is. Because the first issue they run into is they way over deliver in the first place.
Okay.
But yes, if they're doing like what is on average, typical, and like acceptable, then yes, about 30, 35 before they drive themselves crazy.
Yeah, so they way over deliver. I mean, people who work in fitness, and I know this from experience, generally are unbelievably caring and empathetic, and so will go far out of their way, even at their own demise, to serve the people that they serve. And then the other one is they're just generally hardworking people. Like, people who work in fitness are hardworking people. We're the ones who get our ass up when we don't feel like it and lift things up and down, give or take 6 to 8 times, and lose count, so usually do 2 extra. When everybody else is sitting at home eating bonbons watching Netflix. You know what I'm saying?
We said working hard.
They're just hardworking
maybe
people.
math.
Definitely not good at math. Definitely not good at math. And so you're right. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing to work extra hard for customers when you're newer, because you're figuring it out.
Right.
You're figuring it out. We do have some students in the Online Trainer Academy, or in the Online Trainer Mentorship. We do have some that are working with 50 plus themselves at a time. And overwhelmingly what we help them with is basically like, they're like, yeah, I think I could probably take on a couple more. You're like, yeah, you might be able to, but to what end? And so you need to hire 2 people right now, like not one, like you need to hire 2 people right now to take on people from you. And then begin that next leg up. Like, if you're already stretched and you think that you can stretch a bit more, you probably shouldn't stretch a bit more. You should probably use that as a sign to say, because even if you do stretch a bit more, again, like to what end? I mean, this thing is gonna break. So what we usually say to people is, once you're pretty reliably at 30 to 35 clients, that's when you start. That's when you start building this scalable service. And so what does that mean? Okay. Step 1 is usually to hire another coach. Before you actually work on the product, step 1 is usually to hire another coach. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is you will figure out very quickly when you hire somebody else who's not you, what's broken in your system that you were putting Band-Aids on. The second is it will open up a little bit of time, of your time, to start working on the actual product that you're selling. Again, you have been delivering a service. The way to scale is to now view it as a product. And so how do you do that? I actually like hiring on one of your past clients instead of looking for some expert coach with expert credentials. Like, you are in this position because you are by definition exceptional. It is going to be very, very difficult to find somebody else who is exceptional because they by definition are probably going to have their own business. And you also can't expect them to gain clients for you. Like, that's your responsibility. Any coach who could get their own clients is not going to work for you, most likely. So I love looking at this and saying, I don't actually need somebody to be a coach for me that's a subject matter expert that knows as much as I do about fitness or nutrition or habits or whatever it is, because they're actually going to be delivering my expertise. Instead, what you want to choose for when you're looking for somebody is you want to select for somebody who is naturally empathetic and who can connect with your people. And so the best person is somebody who used to walk in their shoes because they understand the journey better and they're going to be able to connect with that journey. And also somebody who's been through your process, because then you don't need to educate them on your process. They've actually experienced it and felt it and know what it feels like. And so at the beginning, give them 5 clients. Not a lot, but give them 5 clients and say to them, here's the programs and stuff like that. Come to me whenever you need anything. And then every time they come to you, you document the question and you document the answer. And what you'll find is over time, they need to come to you less and less and less. And so all of these little nuanced situations like, oh, this person has this event coming up, or this person has this injury or whatever it is. Well, now you have documented what to do, right? And over time, they're going to need to come to you less. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is you want to work backwards from the best people that you've ever trained, from the best people you've ever worked with. Because, like I said, the way to scale your business is to actually build it for one specific person, because that's going to allow you to build templates and what I call pillars. And so don't guess. Work backwards. Draw a line down the center of a page, and on one side of the page, write the 10 people that have paid you the most amount of money since you started this thing. If you have a Stripe account, a PayPal account, or whatever it is, you can literally just search. And even if you don't, you probably know. So who's the highest lifetime customer value? Right, write down those 5, 10 people. And then on the other side of the page, right, just who did you like working with the most? It might mean that they followed your advice. It might mean that they asked you the fewest questions. It might mean that they did what you said that you did. It might mean that you just liked them as a person. Whatever that is, write those down. And so one is objective, one is subjective. And then just make connections. Who appears on both lists? Okay. You will probably find that there's going to be 3 to 5 people who appear on both lists. This will take you like 10 minutes. You'll probably find that there's going to be 3 or 5 people on both lists. And you will also probably find that they actually are pretty similar to one another. Not always, and not every single one, but they're probably going to be pretty similar to one another. They're both going to be guys who used to be collegiate athletes who let themselves go and now have families and have that kind of athlete mentality, but want to look better in a t-shirt and whatever, or whatever it is. Okay, great. So now you have this person, and you might need to choose, right? You might need to choose. Now, all of what I'm saying here is this is how you scale, and this is the process that I'm walking through of how you productize this. It does not mean that you can't take anybody else outside of this bucket. What it does mean, though, is that you have to understand that if you do take on anybody outside of this bucket, they are by definition going to be unscalable and a lot more work for you to do. Again, we have somebody who is in the online trainer mentorship right now, Forrest. He used to own a bunch of gyms. He's doing great, making lots of money and building a massive online training business with a bunch of staff. And he just, we worked through a similar process with him. And he just loves working with a couple really, really chronically obese people at a time. It's not his core clients. So we just said, if that's what fires you up, cool. The name of the game here is not necessarily to optimize profit and to optimize revenue all of the time. If you really love working with these people, take on one or two of them at a time. Just know that when you're doing that, you're not going to be able to scale it the same way unless everybody fits in that bucket, right? So once you have this person, again, you've already built their programs, haven't you? Go back and find their programs. If you have 2 or 3 different clients that fit this mold, go back and look at their programs. They're probably pretty good. Build templates out of that. That's your template then when they start. Then look at all of the other aspects of support that they needed. And those are going to make up your pillars. And so one pillar of working with online clientele might be the workout program, might be the actual sets and reps. Another one might be home time habits. So a pillar could be, hey, what are healthy snacks at home because you have kids? Or I'm talking as the guy who ate Cheerios for breakfast. Or what are habits at work? When you're stressed out and you have meetings and you have 2 minutes in between a meeting and there's a snack machine, right? What are some healthy habits? Like grab some almonds, grab some whatever. So maybe that's, I'm using Forrest here as an example because this is some of the stuff that we went over with him. But that might be one of your pillars is, okay, healthy snacks, healthier snacking. What are the things that you worked with this person on? You'll find that they're probably going to be similar. And so you ideally want 2 to 4 pillars in this category. You don't want to do more than 4. And so what we have in the online trainer mentorship now, it's not fitness or nutrition coaching, it's obviously business coaching for people who are looking to scale. We call it the 4 C's because our pillars are content, conversations, calls, and clients. And so the 4 pillars that everybody needs to work on that comes in there are, hey, how do you attract people? Maybe that's content on social media. We call it content, but it might be like a lot of networking offline too, type things. Conversations, how do you actually engage somebody in a conversation? Because nothing happens without a conversation. Calls, which is basically sales. Like how do you actually take them from that conversation to buying from you? Because nothing happens until you make a sale. And then clients, how do you take exceptional care of them? And that might be the workout or the nutrition program. That might just be like customer service type things that you embed into. So we know that everybody needs these 4 pillars. Now, when somebody comes in, what we're able to do is every single person then has what we call a success coach. And so here's what it ultimately looks like when you scale this business is you effectively have 3 categories of people. You effectively have 3 categories of people. Woo-hoo.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It's been a long time since we heard that train went.
Like the train doesn't come anymore. Just realize that.
Yeah. I thought you moved to a van down by the river. And
$1 billion skit, by the way. Absolutely gold. I may watch that after this.
Oh my God, I want you to. And so you effectively have 3 types of people in business. You have the owner, who's probably going to be you, and who might still work with some customers. Then you have, call it the main coach. We call it in the online trainer mentorship, we call it the success coach. Now, the success coach, I'm not talking about the marketing and sales aspect of it, but the success coach is effectively their concierge. Because what somebody needs when they're in a coaching service is they need to know that if they need to know who is in their corner at any given time. They need to know that anytime they need anything, anytime they have a question, they know exactly who to speak to and how to reach out to that person. I'm going to say that again because I actually think that that is the single most important aspect of customer service when it comes to coaching is the second that somebody signs up, they have to have the phone number and the email and to be told in explicit terms I am who you come to if you ever need anything. If you're ever thinking about anything, if you ever have questions, if you ever need access to anything, I'll make it happen. Whatever you need. Okay? And so the success coach is basically call it like their Sherpa along their journey. They're their concierge. Now, this person might also be the person who's building their program. It might not, though. And it's probably not going to be the person who is the expert in everything that they need. Because when you think about all of the different skills and attributes that a coach needs to be an exceptional coach, it basically doesn't exist in one human. You need somebody who is nerdy and scientific. You need somebody who lifts. You need somebody who, well, not necessarily who lifts, but you need somebody who like has been through probably a transformation or a fitness journey themselves. You need somebody who's empathetic, yet stern, motivational. You need somebody who's good at marketing, probably a great communicator, and is entrepreneurial. That's not one human. And even if that is one human that possesses all of those skills, number one, nobody is going to be great at all of those skills. Like, I think that I have a mediocre to good knowledge and skill based at all of those things. And that's actually led to a lot of my success, is understanding that it's not a single skill that is valuable. It's actually the combination of skills and having a mediocre skill set in a whole bunch of things that complement one another. I talk about this in the Obvious Choice book. The misconception is that getting better at one thing is actually going to help you move forward in your career. And it doesn't. We reach a point of diminishing returns in single disciplines of knowledge very, very quickly. 1 + 1 = 2 when you get better at skills. When you get better at different skills that complement one another, like all of those things that I talked about, progress becomes exponential. 1 + 1 begins to equal 10. And so in a scalable coaching service, what you actually want to look for, and this is why it's important to build your pillars, is because you have your concierge person. Like I said, you have 3 categories of people, right? You have your owner, who's probably you. You have your concierge person, who is really empathetic. They're the coach. So they're there to be, call it like a stern friend. They're like a friend who don't take no shit. You know what I'm saying? Like they're there for you and they build trust with a person, but they also just like call the person out on their shit when they need to be, because that's what a coach does, isn't it? They care for the person and they know what's best for them. And then what you need to have is you actually have subject matter experts for the pillars. And some of these roles might be the same person as you're building up your thing. Right? You might be the centralized programmer, for example, building the templates, and you might be the person that people come to if they have questions about programs at the beginning. But as you begin to build out, what you do is if you know what the pillars are, then you can very specifically go to a person and be like, yo, you're actually shitty with humans. You're not a good communicator. But all you do is you read textbooks and build workout programs. So how about we build a model where you don't talk to humans, but
do that.
You do what you're great at. Okay? And then you have somebody else who's just like, oh, I love habits. I love telling people to drink more glasses of water in a day. But that person has no idea how the hell to undulate and periodize a program. Well, great. Okay, that person now is the expert that you call in for that other pillar. You see what I'm saying? This might be at the beginning one person, which might be you, as you have other coaches that are basically your concierge staff, your Sherpas, your we call them success coaches. But you know that as you scale out, you're going to begin to, and these are probably not full-time roles. These are probably contract roles. So then what you do is you can look for people with this very specific skill set to align with these pillars. to build the programs, to work on these habits, to build these. Okay, well, we really think that when people join in, for example, Forrest has a guide on healthy snacking that every client gets when they join the program. Well, you might bring somebody in to build that guide for you and pay them a couple $100 or pay them $1,000 to build that guide. Well, great. Now that's done. And then as you begin to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is what we do with the online trainer mentorship, is when somebody first joins the program, you know what the pillars are. You have ideally quantifiable metrics or easily identifiable, qualifiable metrics. Ideally, it's quantifiable, but it might not be possible. And once somebody first comes in, they meet with their success coach, and the first job of the success coach is to put numbers or figure out where the person stands in these pillars and prioritize them. Because I don't think that you can really get good and get better measurably at more than one thing at a time. But I do think that you can get measurably better in a 2 or 3 week sprint at one thing at a time, so long as you focus on that. And so we know that anybody who comes into the online trainer mentorship has these 4 pillars, right? Content, conversations, calls, and clients. We also know that nobody should be working on more than one of them at the same time. And so the first thing that you do when you meet with our success coach is you put in numbers of where you're at. We have a conversation. We figure out what is the priority right now. And then we have a learning management system. It's just it's basically a membership site. It's like a password protected content hub. And the success coach actually goes and unlocks in that client's account the one area that they need to work on. They don't say to them, hey, you got access to everything, go check out whatever module 2. They literally only unlock module 2 for that person. Because we know that if we don't do that, y'all are going to look at everything. And at the same time, this is bigger than what you might have when you're starting, but we have a call every week on each of the pillars. So we have a group call every week. I can't remember what the order is, but on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and Thursday, we have one group call for each of the pillars. So let's say Monday is content, Tuesday is conversations, Wednesday is calls, Thursday is clients. And you don't attend all of them. Your success coach says, hey, you should go on the calls. You should go on the content call, whatever, this week. You should go on the Wednesday call this week. Here, I put it in your calendar for you. If you can't make it, let me know. I'll send you the recording of it. And if they need extra help, what they do is they actually book them in on a one-on-one with the expert in that category. Because what we have is a local expert who is exceptional with content. We have a local expert who's exceptional with conversations. We have a local expert who's exceptional with calls and with client care. And they run the group call, but they're also available to help with individuals when needed. And so this is how you scale a product. Because you can take advantage of the group for all of these things. But when you're looking for help, you know exactly what you're looking for in each category. You're not looking for, call it a jack of all trades in each thing. Was there anything that I missed in that? I wonder if I should go into like the content itself a little bit more, where there's some places where humans need to show up to like coach you through stuff. But most of coaching is actually like, call it 101 level type stuff, is actually pretty beginner level material. And I think that leveraging technology, it might be like a quick coach. It might be like a training software, but it also might be like a membership site, like a learning management system, like what we use for with videos, with whatever, that are like educational, right? And I think the difference is this. You should build a curriculum around what you do. You should build a curriculum around each pillar. So as you want to scale, you should build a curriculum around each pillar. And the way to build a curriculum is to say, what are the things that I really don't need to coach somebody through, but they need to know? So like, hey, here's basic workout jogging. Here's a healthy snacking, in the middle of the day. Like, you don't need to be on a call with somebody and say, eat almonds, instead of a chocolate bar in the middle of the day. Like Snickers is not a good snack. A Cliff Bar is not a good snack, right? You don't need to, but it's probably worthwhile to communicate that. It's probably worthwhile to teach people how to read labels. It's probably worthwhile to teach people basic nomenclature and workout jargon and just like kind of how to be a nice person in the gym. Like, what are the kind of unwritten rules of the gym if you're relatively new to the gym? All that kind of stuff. Around each pillar.
The less nuanced stuff. Like coaching calls are where a lot of nuance is introduced because we have those foundational things that are largely true, but there are always going to be edge cases. And so that's where those one-on-one calls come into play because the foundational information needs a tweak because their situation is unique in some way.
The foundational stuff needs a tweak, or the person just needs like an attaboy or a keep with it or a, hey, there's some self-talk. Let's talk through this. Like the coaching, where is the human going to need to show up? You can't do that in automated content delivery platforms, but you can do most things. And the problem is what a lot of coaches do when they try to scale is they miss this part. They miss this part where they have the pillars for their service. So they miss this part where they choose their customer. And what that does is it creates this spiral, this waterfall effect where if you can choose your customer, you work backwards. What you're able to do is you're able to identify the pillars, which allows you to template many parts of the program, which allows you to build a curriculum around those pillars, which then removes humans where the humans don't need to be, which allows you to show up more as a human, where a human needs to show up, which are things like the coaching, the empathy, which are things like, hey, let's help you get over this hump. And then what it also allows you to do from a business owner standpoint is be very pinpointed in, here's the problem I need to solve, here's what I need to hire for. I don't need a full-time person who's great at everything. I need somebody who is really, really good at building workout programs. I need somebody who is really, really good at motivational interviewing. And then we'll talk about sales in part 2 of this, but it works the same with sales. Part of scaling a coaching service is scaling your marketing, and probably you don't need to do anything different than what you're doing now. You just need to do a way better job of maintaining a book of leads and nurturing those leads and creating conversations with them over time.
The seasoning on this dish is really knowing your client. And that just ruins everything. Everything is ruined when you don't know exactly who you're talking to. Like you can erase any of the digital recordings of any of these podcasts if you first don't know who you're talking to. None of the other shit works. But the second thing that's big here is self-awareness, right? Just being relentlessly self-aware that objectively I suck at this and that's okay. This 100%. Is the spot I need filled.
Because you probably suck at most things. There are very few things in this world that I don't suck at. I'm really, really good at building products. I think that I'm world class at building products. I'm really shit at almost everything else.
But understanding that is what allows you to appropriately fill in the gaps. And if you go into scaling thinking that you're going to be everything to all your clients, it's going to have a rough time. Like it's going to be a problem more often than that. But those pillars only come if you know who you're talking to.
Well, those pillars only come if you know who you're talking to, and if you're willing to take a step back, I think, and work backwards from the best people that you've ever worked with. And be okay saying no to other people who don't fit that mold and recommend them to other people. I mean, that's one of the things that happens in the online trainer mentorship all the time is we have our students sending clients to other people that don't fit their mold. Hey, one of my clients has a wife who,
all the time.
And it's not that they can't work with that person. It's that that person doesn't fit their scalable business model. And again, you might choose to take that person on knowing that it is going to be much more work to work with that person than it's going to be to work with somebody who fits in your bucket. And that's totally fine, as long as you know that going in. But, I mean, we get this with the online trainer mentorship, dude. Like, I say we turn down 90%, we probably turn down closer to 98% of people who inquire about it. And the reason for that is quite simply, it doesn't make sense for us to work with you. And I think as a business owner, I think there's a confidence about that people feel. But I also think there's a power in that. Like to be able to say to somebody, it doesn't make sense for us to work with you. We think that you would be better served somewhere else. There's a lot of power in that statement, isn't there? Let's recommend another episode and get out of here. And then part 2, I'm looking forward to talking more about the sales process of a scalable coaching service, because I hope that this has helped a lot of people just kind of understand what goes into it. This is the type of stuff that I'm glad that we have a podcast for, Amber, because I don't think I've ever seen anything written about this ever. Because it's kind of hard to, it's not that it's hard to write about, but it's hard to find an audience for, because it's for kind of the top, call it 5%. And so by the time that somebody is ready to scale, they fall into all of these traps of trading in good business models for bad business models, because it's way easier to sell somebody on building an app or a membership site for no other reason than it's easier to teach, and it's easier for me to get you to pay me money.
Right.
To teach you how to build a really shitty membership site. Right. Than it is for me to say, let's productize your service business so that you can make way more money and work a lot less and put out a lot less cash up front. And so the incentives are misaligned for teaching these business models, which unfortunately leads a lot of good trainers astray. And by the time that they figure out they're many months in a bad business model, have spent many, many thousands of dollars, and are often so burnt out and disenchanted by the entire process that they either need a break or they leave the industry altogether. I've seen that happen far, far too many times. So here's an episode I want you to listen to in the meantime. Episode 186. It's called Help Everyone Without Going Broke. It kind of hits into this idea of what's a good business model, what's a bad business model. And the way to help everyone is not to sell your services for very cheap. The way to help everyone is not to feel like you're a good person by being like, I'm going to sell this for $5. It's not actually. There's a much better way to do it. And the much better way to do it is what I call whales and minnows approach, which basically guides my entire philosophy of how I live and how I operate the business. So help everyone without going broke. It is, this episode kind of lays out my entire philosophy of how I operate. If you were to ask me what's the number one thing that you've learned the hard way over your years that you will never make the mistake of breaking again, I lay it out in this episode. So episode 186, Help Everyone Without Going Broke. Hope you're good. Thanks for listening.